you very much for the great introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak at this Matrix Global Summit, where we'll discuss the three important themes: innovate or perish, climate-friendly growth, and riding giant waves. Specifically, I want to talk about how the mega trends of electrification, sustainable plastics, and generative AI are really transforming industries and driving business opportunities. You know, when we have these kinds of discussions, I try to always remember that success really is a team effort. And it's with this spirit of collaboration and the belief that we can learn from each other that I'm here today. So I'm really excited to share with you my thoughts and ideas about these developing technologies. Next slide, please. So before we immerse ourselves in these transformative trends that are shaping our future, I wanted to kind of briefly introduce my current company, TiE Connectivity, to give you some context for my perspective that I'm going to share. TiE is a $16 billion global industrial technology leader, established over 75 years ago. And
Hello. Excuse me, sir. We can't hear you.
Not getting your audio.
We are not getting your audio, sir.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So I just wanted to introduce TiE a bit, you know, before we jump into these transformative trends. Technologically, TiE is a powerhouse. We pride ourselves on our cutting edge engineering capabilities, from advanced material science and deep process engineering expertise to broad software and systems integration capabilities. And if you could just move to the next slide, please. Very good. TiE invests heavily in its technological leadership. We actually hold more than 15,000 patents, really reflective of our continued commitment to innovation. One noteworthy fact about TiE, which will tie a bit to some of the discussion we'll have later, is our commitment to sustainability. TiE has been recognized for its efforts in this area, and we've actually landed a spot on the Dow Jones Sustainable North America Index for the last 7 years. So really, truly a commitment to the sustainable initiatives that we're going to talk a bit about later. So now that I've shared a bit about TiE Connectivity, I'm sorry we had some audio problems at the beginning there, but let's really delve into those transformative trends that are shaping our collective futures. Next slide, please. So let's start a discussion with a key piece of the innovate or perish theme, which is the electrification megatrend. Next slide. I'm sure you all know this well, but electrification is a process of converting various technologies and industries from fossil fuels to electric. It's a major force behind the growing adoption of EVs, grid modernization, distributed power, as well as the transition to renewable energy sources. Electrification is not just about electric vehicles, though, even though it seems like whenever we talk about that, that's the big subject. It really encompasses a broader shift to anything that's driven electric, resulting in the concept of electrification of everything. Next slide, please. Electrification impacts numerous products and services, from electric cars and buses to power tools, home appliances. It also affects power generation, transmission and distribution, and of course, charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. Morgan Stanley recently pointed out we're really due for an unprecedented cycle of grid upgrading due to this residential, commercial, and municipal markets all revamping their outdated systems in response to the convergence of all these electrification themes. Next slide, please. So what's driving and enabling this change? Well, there's a few things. A big piece of it is the rapid decline in battery cost. It's the growing EV charging infrastructure. There's globally a lot of governmental policies that are pushing on this, as well as increasing consumer awareness of climate change. Additionally, advances in renewable energy technology, such as solar and wind, contribute to this growth of electrification. Next slide, please. The electrification transformation is really happening at a pretty astonishing speed. Growth related to EV charging is expected to surpass $15 billion by the year 2030. And then, the cost of lithium ion batteries has dropped 89% between 2010 and 2020, making electric vehicles and in fact electric everything really more affordable. Meanwhile, the number of public EV charging points grew worldwide by 60% just between 2018 and 2019. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about what benefits it drives. Electrification, it saves money. It can reduce emissions. It can promote energy efficiency. EVs tend to have lower operating costs than their internal combustion engine counterparts because of the fewer number of moving parts, lower fuel expenses. Electrification contributes to cleaner air quality, resulting in better public health and environmental benefits. Electrification does have its challenges though, right? Including the need for improved charging infrastructure. There's the upfront cost of some of these newer systems can be higher than their traditional counterparts. And there's a major concern with the availability and the sustainability of some of the raw materials that go into the batteries. Next slide, please. So how is TiE, how are we engaged with this electrification megatrend? Well, we have a number of product families across our segments that we're either developing or plan to develop. These include programs in battery connectors, various sensors, charging inlets, contactors. We have cable protection, and we have PV system opportunities and more. Just to give you one kind of more specific example, we have a number of applications kind of in the tool and the power tool space where we're switching to battery power. And the connectors for these applications have a few challenging requirements, including high current capability, a high number of connect and disconnect cycles, as well as the requirement to disconnect while under power, which means there's a lot of destructive arcing that's happening each time you connect that circuit. And there's also some additional very challenging environmental demands. Fortunately, this is a sweet spot for TiE. That's one of the things we're good at is doing connector design for these kind of critical applications. So it's something that we feel is a pretty high growth area for us. So just one small example of how we're leveraging this megatrend. Next slide, please. Electrification megatrend presents a lot of opportunity for startups as well. If you think about product development opportunities, there's things in really in just about every space. Heating and cooling, for example, where we're shifting from fossil fuel driven heating to electrical driven heating like heat pumps. There's opportunities for products in battery technologies, battery management and protection, fast charging technologies, combined AC/DC charging systems. We can think about things like smart appliances and robotics that are growing. And then as you move out of the product space and you think about materials and processes, there's opportunities for startups in areas like developing new materials that have higher durabilities, with higher current and higher mating cycle, like we talked about for that connector a moment ago. Developing improved plating systems and improving resistance to arcing. So there's opportunities in product, process, and materials that are driven by the megatrend. And next slide, please. So the future outlook for electrification is really promising with the continued growth in electric vehicle adoption and renewable energies. As we advance technologies, the costs continue to decline. Electrification is expected to play a really critical role in achieving that kind of sustainable low carbon future, which is a theme that kind of runs through a lot of what we talk about today. I'll finish this piece of the discussion by saying electrification is really a transformative shift in technology. It's not merely a passing trend. It's really a profound change propelled by numerous concurrent technological advancements, and it's accelerating at an unprecedented pace. So let's switch gears now to climate-friendly growth, specifically sustainable plastics revolution. When we say sustainable plastics, what do we mean? These are materials that are designed to reduce the environmental impact through things like their biodegradability, their compostability, or their recyclability. They offer an alternative to conventional plastics, which in some cases can persist in the environment for centuries and of course contribute to pollution. Sustainable plastics are not one size fits all. It's really a diverse group of materials, including biodegradable plastics made from renewable resources. It includes recycled plastics, as well as biopolymers that can be composted or recycled. Importantly, their adoption aligns with the goals of the circular economy, which really aims to eliminate waste through the continual use of resources. Next slide, please. Sustainable plastics have applications across really every industry, but to name a few: packaging, automotive, agriculture, and all sorts of consumer goods. Products made from sustainable plastics include, again, many things initially, but there's a lot of cutlery and food containers, shopping bags, agricultural films, and even some consumer products are starting to be made from sustainable resins. The transition towards a circular economy could reduce plastic pollution by 80% by the year 2040, according to one report from the United Nations Environmental Program, or UNEP. Of course, this would have to be achieved through some pretty deep policy changes, deeper than we have now, and in the various countries, alongside innovations in product design and business models. Next slide, please. So what's driving this change? A lot of it has to do with consumers increasingly seeking environmentally friendly products. And while companies are making commitments to reduce plastic waste and adopt that circular economy we talked about earlier, and of course, governments are beginning to enact policies and regulations to support the adoption of sustainable plastics. Next slide, please. The global bioplastics market is projected to grow at a CAGR of greater than 16% between 2020 and 2025, and is expected to reach over $13 billion. In the European Union, the recycling rate for plastic packaging waste increased from about 25% in 2005 to nearly 43% in 2019. Furthermore, a circular economy approach reportedly could prevent as much as 500 million tons of carbon emissions annually, while saving 4.5 trillion in environmental and social costs by the year 2040. Next slide, please. So sustainable plastics impact consumers by providing these environmentally friendly alternatives to traditional plastic products. And the companies that adopt those sustainable plastics will be able to demonstrate their commitment to sustainability and really attract that growing number of environmentally conscious consumers. Sustainable plastics can save money by reducing waste disposal costs and minimizing that environmental impact of plastic pollution. UNEP report suggests that while the investment cost of systemic change to introduce these bioplastics are substantial, they're much lower in the long term than the cost of continuing to use these non-sustainable technologies. You're seeing industries such as packaging and agriculture and automotive are increasingly incorporating sustainable plastics into their products and processes. And in countries like China, which is the world's largest producer and consumer of plastics, the transition towards sustainable plastics and the circular economy will be critical in achieving their carbon neutrality goals. Other countries as well, I would say. Next slide, please. Sustainable plastic development does have some significant challenges. These include some higher upfront production costs, the need for improved recycling infrastructure, and there's also, of course, the potential for greenwashing, which I'm sure we've all heard about. Additionally, the performance of some of these sustainable plastics may not yet match the performance of their conventional counterparts, making adoption a little bit slower. And with the slightly higher cost as well, in some cases, you could see slower adoption there as well. Some substantial challenges there, but certainly a lot of good progress being made. Next slide, please. So how are we at TiE Connectivity focused on reducing CO2 caused by plastics? We have a comprehensive corporate level center of expertise, which is driving progress in a number of key areas, including development of sustainable plastic alternatives, so actual resin development, implementing processes to improve recyclability, and designing products and tooling that actually reduce the amount of scrap that we produce. I'll say briefly as a side note, even though it's not resins, we're also beginning to look at the sustainability of metals and plating, though this represents a much smaller portion of our CO2 emissions, which is why we're focused on the resins initially. So just to share, again, one example of how we're driving sustainable resin development at TiE. A lot of our products use PA66 as their base plastic. This is a standard nylon. However, we use a lot of different formulations depending on the specific needs of the application. And nylon is not particularly carbon friendly. So we're looking at replacing it with a bio-based nylon called PA56. This is a resin that's made from biomaterials like corn or sugarcane, and it has a substantially lower carbon footprint than that standard PA66 than regular nylon. It's got pretty good mechanical properties when you compare it to standard nylon, but there are some limitations in things like its flame resistance, its ability to pass glow wire, etc. So again, since we use a lot of different grades of nylon, there's probably some areas we can introduce this now, and we are, and there's some other development that we need to do to be able to spread this out even further. So again, just wanted to share one example of the way TE is using material development to meet this growing industry sustainability need. Next slide, please. So how can startups benefit from this sustainable resin initiative? Well, they can get involved in the development of alternative resins to replace the current ones. We talked about PA66, which is nylon, but there's also PBT, which is actually fairly carbon friendly already, but certainly could be lower. PPS, LCP, et cetera, a lot of really common resins that there's currently no good alternatives today. So like you could see a startup getting involved in development of some of those things, either standalone or in partnership with perhaps some schools or other partners. Startups could identify ways to improve some of the performance characteristics. I talk about PA56, which just doesn't have some of the characteristics to meet some of the applications. And so maybe there's some green additives that we could add or other slightly different formulations that will improve those performance characteristics and allow us to really spread out that biomaterial a lot more broadly than we can today. There's also opportunity for startups in developing new recycling technologies, creating new bioplastics and additives that help the plastic degrade better. And they could even get involved in helping other companies through education and consultancy. It doesn't have to be product development, right? It could be through teaching and sharing knowledge. Next slide, please. So the future outlook for sustainable plastics is very promising. There's a truly large growing consumer awareness, as well as some growing regulatory pressure driving the demand for these eco-friendly materials. And as those technological advancements continue, the performance of these plastics will improve, which will also accelerate their adoption across all the industries. As indicated by UNEP, adhering to this roadmap towards a circular economy can deliver major economic, social, and environmental wins. And really that makes the sustainable plastics revolution more than a trend. It's really a crucial element of this broader transition towards a sustainable circular global economy. I'll end this piece by saying that design for sustainability is a principle that will need to be integral to all of our companies, really in the same way that, say, design for manufacturing is today. The shift represents more than just an obligation. It's really a substantial opportunity to innovate, to lead, and thrive in a world that's increasingly aware of and responsive to the urgency of sustainability. Next slide, please. So we'll finish our discussion with the theme of riding giant waves and talk a bit about the generative AI revolution. Next slide, please. So, by now we've all seen this tremendous excitement over generative AI, but what is generative AI? What do we mean specifically? This is AI that models that can generate new, previously unseen content, such as images, text, music, etc. These models learn patterns and structures from existing data, and then they use this to create novel output. Generative AI is not merely a tool for entertainment, although it can be that as well. It's also good at writing poems if you forget your wife's birthday. Don't ask me how I know that. But it really has truly practical applications across industries such as healthcare, manufacturing, marketing, research, really just about everything. Just for instance, AI plays a crucial role in marketing, with 47% of marketers reportedly trusting it for activities like ad targeting and real-time content personalization. Next slide, please. Generative AI impacts a wide range of products and services. These include, we talked about content creation, drug discovery, material design, customer support, and more. Applications such as AI-generated art, music, personalized content, advanced simulation. In fact, the retail industry is slated to increase AI adoption from 40% to roughly 80% just in the next few years, really demonstrating that broad range of the impact of AI. Next slide, please. So what's enabling and driving this change? Well, there's a few things. Of course, you've got these advances in deep learning. You also have advances in computational power. And then critically, the availability of these really, truly large data sets. That's really kind of driving a lot of this recent growth in AI you've seen. In China, 58% of the companies have deployed AI, really showing how these increasingly accessible AI tools and the growing interest in AI research are driving the development and adoption worldwide. Next slide, please. AI has grown rapidly, especially over the past decade. The number of AI research papers published annually increased by 300% between 1998 and 2018. And the global average adoption of AI across industries surged to 34%, with additionally 42% of companies actively exploring adopting AI as well. Major players, as I'm sure you know, include technology companies like Google, NVIDIA, Intel, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon, and of course, OpenAI. But it also includes academic institutions and government agencies. These organizations are investing heavily in AI research, developing new algorithms and techniques, and applying AI to a wide range of real-world problems. Next slide, please. Generative AI can save money, right? It can help us increase efficiency. It can enable new forms of creativity. For example, AI-driven email marketing has not only reduced production costs, but improved revenue, critically for companies, for 41% of marketers, while AI-driven drug discovery is accelerating the development of many new treatments. Companies can benefit from generative AI by doing things like automating tasks. They can optimize various processes, and of course, they can foster innovation. Sectors like retail are expected to see profit increases of up to 59% by the year 2035 through adopting various AI applications. Next slide. Like the other megatrends, there are some significant concerns over the rapid growth of AI, and these are quite real. We've seen these in the news lately as well. These include challenges such as ethical concerns, how it's being used. They include things like concerns for job displacement, people being replaced by AI functionality. And of course, there's the potential for misuse, which we've already seen several impacts to the world through some AI misuse. While there's an increased acceptance of AI, and in fact, 62% of customers say that they'd allow AI if it improved their customer experience, companies and governments really have to address these challenges to ensure responsible AI adoption. The future outlook for generative AI is promising, with continued advancements in AI research and the growing adoption of these technologies across really every industry. And it's expected to automate up to 50% of tasks in the next 5 to 7 years, really paving the way for increased efficiency and innovation across segments. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is TE doing with AI, and what do they plan to do? Well, we're looking at using generative AI across things like materials development, part in product design, process development, and data management, as well as other areas. A few specific examples. Right now, we're looking at it to do some product design, some mold and die design. We're working on some material design. We're using it for additive manufacturing. We're looking at AI for inspection and process optimization. We're doing information management. We're actually doing patent analysis with generative AI so that we can understand some of the technology trends. And this, honestly, is TE just kind of testing the waters. We expect generative AI to impact nearly every aspect of our business in the next few years. One real specific example that we talked about to demonstrate the effectiveness of generative AI for part design, we compared the design output of what a human engineer could do with an AI tool designer for a plastic molded automotive flange. And in this case, the AI-based design was produced 83% faster. It used significantly less material, which of course saves money, reduces the carbon footprint, et cetera. And it had a substantially shorter mold cycle time, saving additional overhead costs. So just, again, one small success, one early example of how we expect to achieve efficiencies and lower costs through leveraging generative AI tools. Next slide, please. Generative AI offers opportunities for startups, of course. These could be areas such as tooling and design, molding and process optimization, like we kind of just talked about, development of sustainable resins. We talked about that earlier, so there's a tie to the last section, development of other new materials. Additive manufacturing optimization and automation could be tied to AI, building and managing more comprehensive material databases, AI could be used for driving market analyses and opportunity identification for companies looking for where they have the best opportunities to develop new products. Certainly optimizing design and simulation, and improving things like cybersecurity, as well as data analysis and forecasting. So really, truly rich area for startups, and in fact, all companies to leverage AI. Next slide, please. So, as we conclude this discussion on AI, it's important to stress that AI is not just another tool in your toolbox. It really represents a profound paradigm shift, and it's an enabler and an accelerator of nearly everything. I can assure you your competitors are not just adopting AI, they're actively being shaped by it. They're molding their strategic architecture around the opportunities and efficiencies that AI offers. To not embrace it is to willingly risk obsolescence. Next slide, please. So in closing, just a bit of review, the electrification megatrend, it's transforming industries and driving the adoption of clean, efficient, renewable energy technologies. Sustainable plastics offer a more environmentally friendly alternative to conventional plastics, with applications across industries and with significant potential for growth. And generative AI is revolutionizing industries by enabling new forms of creativity, innovation, and efficiency. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the forefront of an era of unprecedented innovation and change. The electrification megatrend, sustainable plastics revolution, and the generative AI revolution are just a few of the examples of the transformative forces really shaping our world. By embracing these changes and seizing the opportunities they present, we can create a better, more sustainable, and more prosperous future for us all. Before we move to the Q&A session, I just want to remind everybody about the next session with TiE. It's titled From IoT to AI, Exploring the Ground Realities of Industrial Automation and Predictive Analytics. In addition, please remember to visit our booth and scan the QR code so we can connect with you. Thank you for your attention today, and I wish you a successful and inspiring Matrix Global Summit.